Hi, I'm Carrie Rebrush, and I'm sitting here with Doug Linkhart, candidate for City Council at large. And Doug, why don't you start off by telling me just a little bit about your professional background?
Sure. I've been in public life for 14 years now. I was a state senator for 8 years and state representative for 2. And then for the past 4 years, I've been a councilman at large. Prior to that, I ran a nonprofit organization called the Neighborhood Resource Center and did economic research and development for consulting firms and the Center for the New West and the Western Governors Association. No, it's actually a think tank here in Denver.
Okay. How long have you lived in Denver?
26 years.
Okay. And, something I'm curious about is, well, first, why did you move from state government to city government?
The nice thing about working at the local level is you can really see the differences that you make. It's close to the people. And it was actually my first choice. I ran for city councilman at large in '91 and came in third. You have to come in first or second. And so in losing that, there was an opportunity to go into the state legislature 2 years later. And so I did that for a period of time. And it was certainly rewarding, but I'm enjoying getting sort of back to the local level where I originally wanted to go.
Okay. And something I've asked some other candidates, everyone says that they really want to be part of city government because the same reason you said, they can see the change happen.
Right.
Do you think that citizens and residents realize the effect that city government has on their daily lives?
Absolutely. I think local government is where most of their interests are. When I walked door to door as a state legislator talking about my race there, I would hear complaints about potholes, complaints about neighbors. I talked to this one house that wanted me to get rid of the neighbor next door who had cockroaches in their house. And they didn't want to talk about state issues. What they were interested in was local.
Okay. And, as a city council member, what do you think have been your biggest accomplishments?
Well, my overall theme has been investing in people and looking at prevention as opposed to fixing problems after the fact. And what we've done there in the youth arena is to expand recreation center hours, create a new program for kids on Fridays and Saturday nights at rec centers, and to work with the school board, nonprofit organizations and other groups to try to consolidate and expand after-school opportunities, summer opportunities for kids. So I've worked a lot around kids' issues.
Okay.
The second area is public safety, and not from the standpoint of just putting more officers on the street, which we have. We've got 100 more officers on the street now than we did 4 years ago, or even last year. But how do we really fix the problem? Because a lot of the public safety problem for us in Denver is created by just a few people who are arrested over and over and over again and put into jail, and they get back out, and put into jail, and they get back out. Generally minor offenses, drug use, vagrancy, things related to homelessness, and those kinds of things. And so we're trying to find a way, and we're succeeding in finding a way to help those people get off of the street entirely and not be victimizing the rest of us.
Okay, can you give me an example? I'm wondering, are you referring to the new drug court? Or?
Well, the drug court is part of it. When the mayor came to us and said we need to build a new jail, Justice Center, 3 years ago, I went to the mayor and said, look, if we're going to invest $378 million in a jail, we also need to set aside money for prevention so that we don't just keep building more and more jails. So we've now set aside $2.3 million this year and $3.5 in 2 more years. And it's overseen by the Crime Prevention and Control Commission, which I sponsored, and I'm now the chair of that commission. So the Crime Prevention and Control Commission allocates money to these different activities, like the drug court. The drug court's our biggest money allocation. But we've also created alternative schools for kids, for middle school kids. We've put money into mental health court, into pretrial services and reentry services. So when people get out, they can get stabilized and back into the community.
Right. Now, I just know from personal research that Colorado ranks at the bottom of the list for the amount of money that goes towards drug treatment as opposed to incarceration costs. And is funding for drug treatment only done at the state level, or is that something that the city also contributes to?
Most of that money actually comes from the federal level, and it's passed down through the states, and it's not very much. We're also at the bottom of the heap on mental health funding, on Medicaid funding, on welfare funding.
Right.
You know, a lot of those safety net programs, the state is really not participating as well as it should.
Right.
At the city level, what we have to do is be real strategic about where we invest the money. And by investing it smartly, we can invest it in the people who can then get more self-sufficient. Unfortunately, we don't have enough money at the local level to cover all the needs.
Right.
You know, we still need to look to the state and the federal government, and I work at those levels as well.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about things that you've accomplished and a little bit about what you'd like to do, but is there anything specific that you would hope to accomplish during your second term as a council member?
Well, actually, very specifically, when the voters passed the bond issue for the new Justice Center, and it's being built now, they also included money for a new jail at Smith Road. So we're still going to have a facility in Northeast Denver at Smith Road for about 400 inmates. And those are longer-term inmates rather than the short-term ones that will be downtown. What I'm hoping to do, and it's a monumental task, is to avoid building that jail. Even though it's been authorized by the voters, the money's been set aside for it. But it's, I mean, why project a jail 7 years out and say, you know, it's inevitable, we can't avoid it, when we have those 7 years to invest in people and make sure that we don't need a jail.
Right. And something I've heard from criminal justice experts is, you know, you build a jail or a prison and you're going to fill it.
Right, absolutely. And so we're trying to find ways to show that all of these different programs work to the point where we not only can do without the jail and perhaps spend some of that money on these programs, but that we can also improve safety at the same time.
Okay.
And the perception of safety.
Now, but what happens if the current jail, you know, in 5, 6, 7 years does end up being inadequate? And, you know, I think probably a big concern for residents would be safety, you know,
Right.
and if we don't have the space to house, you know, short-term criminals, then will they end up back on the street, or?
Half the people in the jail are there for drug use. So, you know, is that a safety concern? Am I going to worry if somebody is on an electronic monitor in their house instead of in jail? The programs that we're looking at are not for violent criminals. They're for people who are minor nonviolent offenders. And there are so many of them that if we can deal with them, prostitutes, drug users, people like that, then we won't need the space. And I don't think people will be as concerned if we can really show that these other systems work.
Right, okay.
Plus they work long term. You know, it means not putting the person back in. We have a guy, you mentioned examples, who's been in jail 74 times. 74 times, and he's not the only one. This is just an example of the many, many people who use jail as a revolving door.
Right.
And every time he's in there for like a week, and then he's back out on the street. And his crime is paint sniffing. He's a paint sniffer.
Right.
And he comes into court, his name is Ray, he's got paint on his face, and he's kind of disheveled, sort of a street person. And the judges all know him, he knows all the judges, he calls them by first name. And you know, it's just sad that that this kind of person ends up, you know, being put in jail for loitering or vagrancy or shoplifting or minor crimes related to his addiction. Whereas if we can deal with his addiction, you know, get him stabilized, then we don't need to use all of our resources that way.
Right.